So as we began walking around, he still had this glowing light emanating from him. And everything was alive. For example, the grass wasn't just grass. The grass was very alive. It was moving with him. It was following in the direction he would go. He said, well, I want to tell you some things. And he said, in this place that we're in, we create very quickly. And I said, oh, he perked my interest. And then he said, but where you're from, it takes a really long time. And you create through your words, and you create through what you think, which he was saying our intention, what we put our focus on, but what you think. And he said, so it's very important that you're very mindful about what you think about, that it's positive, so you can get the things in life that you want.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, my guest is Tamara Caulder Richardson. Hello, Tamara.
Hello, Heather. I am so excited to be here with you.
I am thrilled to have you here. I enjoyed just a small conversation that we had going into this, and you have such an incredible story. In fact, you're kind of an expert in near-death experiences because you've had so many. You've had, I believe, 6, and I'd really like to focus on a few of them that really stand out to me. So why don't you talk about the near-death experiences that you had at age 4 and 5 to start with?
Sure. And just to let people know, most of my near-death experiences were in childhood. And so there was one before then at 3 where I had a nail go through my head, jumping around, playing with my cousin. It was a nail I didn't know about. So that was 3. The 4, so it was 3, 4, and 5. I had them in a row. Tough childhood. So I was always pretty much so awake and a seer, because how can you be the same coming back from that? So at 4, I'll pick up from my mother was seeing this fella, and we were in his car, and it was a bad snowy day, and we had an accident. And what happened was they were in a argument about getting married. She wanted to get married. He didn't. So he slammed the brakes. We went into a tree. And as we did, I was propelled through the windshield. It was old Pontiac. And at that very moment, it's very interesting. At that moment, it was instant. I had no pain. And it's come through in readings a lot with people. People that have had accidents, were they in pain? No, it's like a baseball. God catches that person. There was no pain at all. There was some confusion because it was dark everywhere, and it was literally lights out. Everything was dark. I didn't know where my hands or feet were, so that was a bit confusing. And I didn't know where this place where I was, because I had no perspective, because in this world, we can look out to the horizon and we see a perspective, but there was nothing there to get a grasp of a horizon or perspective. So as I began to have, I didn't know where I was. I was fully thinking and conscious, just like now. I mean, 100%. There was no alteration in my consciousness, which is really wild if you think about it. I mean, it's still you. And so I was like, what's going on? And then I saw this pin light at the end, which started to form into a tunnel. I perceived as a tunnel. What I really think it was a portal to another dimension. That's what I think it was. So at the very end, a light was there, and coming toward me was a figure. And as it got closer, his arms were extended. It was Jesus Christ. That's who it was. And I didn't really, again, I'm 4, so it wasn't like I was religious. I did have a grandmother that talked about Jesus, that she loved him and that he's our friend. I'm really glad she mentioned that, because he's a good person to call on in times like these. But I didn't even think of that. I was just there going, what's going on? And he was coming toward me, almost like there was a motion, like there was wind going back through his hair. There was a perceived motion as he moving forward. There were people behind him. He's still in the darkness. There are people behind him, but he's illuminated. I did not know them, but yet I had the feeling that they were relatives, but I just haven't met them. And as they moved all forward, they were behind him. I figured in support somehow. He was somewhat very serious, and he said, "You have to go back." And I, something inside of me when I saw him, I was like, I didn't want to go back, even though I wasn't even in that beautiful place yet. And he said, "You have to." And I said, "This world is so tough because people lied. I could never understand why people lie. I really, honestly, still don't now. I know there's reasons they do it for fear and manipulation, but I just didn't understand this world." And he said, "You have to go back." I said, "I can't." He said, "You can and you will." And the minute that he said that, I was back in, not really my body. I was back in the car seat. So the guy my mom was dating, later she married, was in the left side in the driver's seat. And they were trying to, these two guys, it was really bad, snowy, bad weather, trying to get the tree wrapped around, trying to get it out. My mom is holding me. She's crying. But what I'm seeing is I'm by location. I'm not in my body. I'm observing the body, but I'm also looking at the scene of the good old boys getting the tire away from the tree with chains. But then I'm also seeing into these alternate multidimensional spiritual realities. And well, for example, where they're pulling the tree was a park. It wasn't a big park. It was a small park, kind of like an area where there's cross sections of the road. But it was freezing. There was black ice, so it wasn't like lively trees. But yet I saw it as spring or summertime, and I saw Native American Indians cooking over a fish with over a fire, like with a wooden stick, holding a child. And then I saw a Gibson girl, 1890 dress, small waist, long skirt, blouse up high, walking with a gentleman that had like a corncob hat, like they used to campaign with. And he's walking, it almost looks like a seersucker, kind of the pinstripe suit. And then I'm seeing behind them a hot air balloon. And I don't know if I'm seeing different time periods bleed through, or is there different time periods happening right now where we're living, but we can't perceive it? I mean, I cannot answer that. Honestly, I haven't met anyone that has been able to answer that. Maybe the answer is both right. I don't know. But then I look to the right and I see a rip in the, if you want to call it, the sky. Obviously, there's not a rip in the sky, but this is what I'm seeing spirit with my spirit eyes. And it looks like an opening, a portal of, I know it may sound odd. It was fire, but not scary like hell and damnation. Fire like creation of God. It looked like a creation of God. It was mighty and magnificent, and it was like God. And I saw beside my car, between that portal of God creation, it was like a river of flames and creation is all I could say. It was the same thing that I saw David DITCHFIELD from England that wrote the book Shine On did. I said, wow, David, that's the one. That's it. But my angel that I had met the year before in my near-death experience, Uriel, which who knew that was an archangel? I didn't even know it was an angel because, I mean, I'm so young. I have no idea about these things. And so beside me, this angel, I say she, it could be she or he, but she is standing there blazing beside me. And my mom is crying. My nose is busted up. And I will tell you, as an adult in my 20s and early 30s, I had 2 surgeries in my nose to remove cartilage because it was so busted up. And so, I mean, praise God that I look fine. It's amazing. And I had the nail injury beforehand, the year before. And then with this, the head going through the windshield, I have a high IQ, didn't mess that up. So I personally believe if God wants you here, he can heal you whole, because I should really theoretically be damaged. And, we can make jokes about that, but in reality, it's a miracle that all that came through. So after that, I was already seeing spirit people at 3, at 4. Boy, that really opened things up. And now I was like, what in the world? Who are all these people? So why I'm seeing the angel here, and I'll wrap this incident up. I look behind me. I mean, there's a lot going on. I look behind me, and again, no one's out. The weather's bad. My grandmother didn't want my mom to go out, but she was stubborn. She still is, but I love her. But behind, there was a firehouse. It was closed. But what I saw were all these old timey dressed firemen, like from the 40s or the 30s, and they were standing outside just observing. I didn't feel any fear at all. I felt like actually they were very concerned. And then I saw people dressed in different time period outfits. And one lady came up to the window. They couldn't see it, only me. They weren't hurt, only me. And so I looked by the window, by the driver's side, and the man mom's dating, eventually my stepdad, he's talking to these guys. But I'm looking at this woman talking to me, and she's got a little pillbox hat, and she goes, "Hi, I'm Judith Hefner. Your grandmother was friends with my mom, and she used to shop at her jewelry store." I mean, it was like, okay. And then I look in the back seat, and I see two women. The other one I haven't identified yet, but the one, Katherine, and she was about 10 years old. I'm like, I don't know who this is. I sensed they were family. Oh, I know who it was. I believe the other one was on my granddaddy's side, but the young girl, Katherine, I never knew a Katherine, but my grandmother had, I never knew this till like I was an adult way later, like not that actually long ago, that Katherine what was my grandmother's sister who died at 10 of TB. So I thought that was really interesting because I never even knew she existed. So that incident afterwards really opened me up to seeing, I would see angels, I would see demons. They would try to walk on the walls. It was awful, with this big teeth in the eyes. And I'm like, and as a little child, I didn't know how to deal with that. So I just prayed up a storm to God. I can tell you, I was just praying up a storm. And so the next year was the big one. My mom married this fella. At that moment with that incident, I never went back to my grandparents' home again. So we were with him in his trailer, which I came from a lot better. It was like a 10,000 square foot house, and they had money. And anyway, it was, hot meals. So now we're in the trailer. So a year later, here he gets a job 3 hours away in Raleigh, North Carolina. So that's when abuse started. Abuse in a perverty way. People don't understand it's perverty. Let's play a game, And so I didn't have the vocabulary to say. I just said things like, I don't want to be alone with him. I don't like him. I don't want to be here. Things like that. But what happened is I had a really big conversation with God, and I said, I just don't want to be here anymore. Can you kill him? But I didn't know what that word meant. I didn't know that was bad. And so I kind of got the feeling like, oh, that's bad. So I said, okay, it's fine. You can take me. So indeed that happened. I got strep throat, and it led into very quickly in 2 days of a fever of 103.9 with climbing. And then, back then they didn't have all these emergency centers. You just had the hospital with an emergency place. And it was in Raleigh. We were in Cary, North Carolina at the time, but I remember the hospital because it was Rex Hospital, like T-Rex. So I'm a kid, I'm thinking dinosaurs. And at the time it was Martin Luther King had been assassinated. So we weren't supposed to go out after 10 o'clock. Now it's 10:30. My fever's getting worse. My mom put me in a tub of ice. She put me into bed. I was unconscious. So we get into, my mom demands we get into the radio car, the media car, and we have to go through all these barricades, and they call ahead. So when I go, as we're going, I die on the way. It was honestly, not to promote this in any way, but with the pneumonia, you just drift away. You just can't help it. And it's kind of peaceful. You're really drowning in your own fluids, but it's peaceful. And so I just was above the car, following the car to the hospital, about 200 feet up, and I was seeing the riots that was going on. So when we got there, I saw all these, there was about 12, and then it ended up being 8 people helping in the room. And there were 2 doctors that were working on me, 2 male doctors, but lots of female nurses. And then they had some medics, but they clocked me in at 15 minutes at dead on arrival. Although they worked on me for 2 hours, where I kept flatlining and I was dead for 2 hours. So I Honestly, during that moment of spirit, I didn't really perceive I was dead. Okay. I knew something wasn't the same, but I had full consciousness. I felt so free. I was so fast. I could zoom around the hospital. There was a little girl by a Lance snack machine that was in a brownie outfit that did see me. And I don't know how she could see me, but she did because we talk mind to mind telepathy. But I would zoom around the hospital and try to help people and talk to them like if they were going to pass. And I would say, hang in there. And, if it wasn't their time. And I thought, this is great. I'm an angel. And so I would go back and check in the room and they would be pumping my lungs out with all this goop. And that kind of grossed me out as a little kid. So I didn't want to see it. So I'd zoom around some more. And then when I finally came back, nurses were crying and the doctor said, I have a little girl her age. And I thought, gee, why are they so sad? And they had covered me up with a sheet. That was, I saw all of that, and I've seen a lot of this through. It started coming out, and then I saw the detail and regression. But the white sheet, I saw that later in life, and that was rough, and I don't know why, but that's kind of final, I guess. So, anyhow, I'm still going, why is everybody upset? So what I see beside the sheet I knew they were Catholic, even though we were Presbyterian Protestant, but I knew they were because of their outfits, and they had a rosary, and it was a male and female, a nun and a priest, and the woman said, blessed are the innocent, and they were praying over me. Well, I didn't know at the time they were praying over me, but they were spirit people, which is kind of cool because I found out later on that Rex Hospital was built by the nuns. It was a Catholic hospital. And I'm like, wow, do they take their job seriously? they're still helping the children. And it used to be a children's hospital too, a certain wing of it. So I thought that was so sweet that they're still caring in spirit for these children. And so the next thing I know, I'm in this amazing, beautiful, I call it paradise. There's actually a song that I every time I hear it, I said, Jesus, this is our song. It's Take Me to Paradise. Anyway, everything was green. It was beautiful. There was a big tree to the left. There were children that were playing on a roundabout where, you push it around and you hold on, and they were giggling. And I was looking around, and it was I just felt instantly safe and loved. It was so good. And he's so awesome. I had to tell y'all, Jesus is real. He is so awesome. And so anyway, I looked down, and this man was leaning down, and by my right side, toward my right side, and he took my right hand. And I said, you're that man I talked to, because my grandmother told me to talk to him. And he said, I am. And he's smiling and he's radiant. He has this light coming out his core. His teeth are beautiful. He has beautiful teeth, and they never show that in depictions, but he's very joyful. And I never saw a lot of joyful pictures. He's a very joyful and a very handsome man. He wasn't white, he wasn't black, he looked Mediterranean. I gotta be honest, he looked like where he was from, but honestly, he probably could be anything. But I knew who he was, and he said, I have something to give you. And I'm 5 years old, so I said, a toy. And he thought that was funny, and I really liked that he thought that, I don't know, that he laughed at my jokes. And so, anyway, yeah, if you get Jesus laughing at your jokes, I felt like I was a headliner at the Comedy Zone. That was awesome. And then he said that he wanted to give me something. He took from his rope of his belt, and he took like some threads off, and then he wrapped it on my left wrist, and he said, I wrap you in my love, protection, and wisdom. Much is given, much you will give. Through the big things, the small things would be acknowledged, and through the small things, it would be the big things that would be done. And then he said, you have to go back. And I said, no, I want to stay here with you. And then he said, your mother needs you. I said, no, she's going to be fine. Now I'll tell my mom that. She's like, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, you'd be okay. It was Jesus. I'm sorry. He takes rank. And he said, no, she does. You've got more love in you than she does. You need to show her love. I said, how do you do that? He said, well, there's no right or wrong way how to show love. He said, but you'll know how. And so I really pitched a fit about staying because it was beautiful and it was just perfect. Everything, the colors were so rich. And I said, well, they're here, the other children. And he said, yes. but you're not supposed to stay here now. And I'm like, oh. And I really, really argued with him, like in a nice way, but I really want to stay. And so he said, I tell you what, why don't we walk around for a while, for a little bit, and then you can go back. And I said, okay. So as we began walking around, he still had this glowing light emanating from him. And everything was alive. For example, the grass wasn't just grass. The grass was very alive. It was moving with him. It was following in the direction he would go, like it would just go that way. The flowers were following him. The trees, the limbs are following him. The sun and the clouds are following. And I was thinking, that is very unusual. Does he know this is going on? And so they were all following him like a slight whisper of admiration and love. And he said, we're going to sit over here. And it was by a big, beautiful tree. And the tree had, it looked like a dogwood, but between a dogwood and a cherry blossom. But then it had little red grapes hanging down. He said, we don't eat from this tree. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not thinking about eating right now. I'm talking to you. And so I was like, okay. He said, this is a very wise tree. And I was like, okay. So there was a big rock in the front. So he sat there. I was too little to sit on the rock. And I did feel my body. It wasn't like this, but it was a sense of a body. It was a body. And so it wasn't like the same substrate, but it essentially was me. It was one of my, I don't know, etheric bodies, but it was me. I mean, we looked pretty solid there. So he said, you can ask me what you want. So I'm leaning beside of him. And, I'm young. I'm 5. I don't know what to ask him. So I asked him about energy. How's energy created? Well, he put it in my head. I instantly knew. I was like, okay, well, that was easy. I'm kind of bored. Then I asked him about dinosaurs, and he told me I didn't have to worry about that anymore. Then I asked him about space, and he said yes. And he talked about that. And then I just, I really didn't know what to ask him. So he started talking. He said, well, I want to tell you some things. And he said, in this place that we're in, we create very quickly. And I said, oh, he perked my interest. And then he said, but where you're from, it takes a really long time. And you create through your words, and you create through what you think, which he was saying our intention, what we put our focus on, but what you think. And he said, so it's very important that you're very mindful about what you think about, that it's positive, so you can get the things in life that you want. And people have a problem with this, but it's actually not very hard. And I said, well, what about how fast we can do it here? And he said, yes, we think it and we're here. And he said, if you want to go, skiing on the Alps, you're there. If you want to go on a picnic, you're there. And they have a replica of everything, without minus the garbage and all that, but somewhat replica. You think heaven on earth, there should be bookends, right? So it's going to look familiar. It's going to look like here. So he said, well, you can try if you want. I said, you mean I can just think something and it'll happen? He goes, yeah. So I thought about us being in a little boat in a little stream, and we were instantly the minute I thought it. And he was on one end, I was on the other end. And then these fish came up, and he picked one up and he held it up, and he just said, hey, you just kind of talked to it for a minute. And then he put it back down. He goes, that's how we fish here. And I thought that was the coolest thing, because they didn't hurt any animals. And they show everything honor. Everything is like in a total vibration of harmony and love. It's just the best. I mean, it's so euphoric there. And so I spent time with him. I was come to find out in my body on earth that a medic saw the sheet move. And anyway, they got my lungs. It took a while. They had given out. So they put me in this tent thing for oxygen. I was in there 3 days in an induced coma. So I spent 3 days with Jesus. And it's not like a memory like, oh, remember the time we went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina and had a family vacation. This is not this kind of memory. This memory permeates my soul. This is the one that says, this is the dream. Heaven and all the things that are spiritual is the real thing. That's why I believe 100% whatever we do toward our spiritual journey, that we should first of all do it without fear if we're walking with God in Christ. They're going to let you know. He tells me everything. He's going to let you know. Okay. And to do it now, because when you cross over, you're that much ahead, because that's the only thing that you do take with you. So those memories of being with him didn't stop there. So when I came back, I knew there was a problem. I actually did not remember in full the whole story, because my mom and stepdad never told me. My grandparents never told me. They never told me. And I think this happens many times with childhood NDEs. Is there's either neglect, new parents neglect, they'll be fine in the pool, neglect, or with, abuse. You get a lot of that, but parents don't always want you to know, because they either feel guilty, they don't want you to know, they feel bad about it, or they just want to leave that behind and let you go and live a happy life. And so when I told my mom like 6 years ago, she was shocked. I remembered all of this. I said, it's okay. Like, whatever happened is okay. I had like the benefit of being with Jesus. And so now I have been since 3.5, 4, I've been talking to him, and I've found at least 40 years of journals. But because I'm from the South, we didn't call it channeling, which channeling just means getting downloaded information, right? Which, no worries when it's Jesus, because it sounds like something he'd say. And so, those moments and time, because he told me also about time. Time is not linear. It's linear here because we have to show up at appointments and do things, but time is fluid. So in our higher spiritual states, time is fluid. So what does that mean? Well, if there's a hurt in the past, you can go back and in a quiet place in your mind, because our mind is consciousness, because it's the same, and go back and forgive that person and forgive yourself. And guess what? In present time, boom, that person you'll get a phone call from them. You'll go, I was just thinking kindly about you. And so we are not of the past and the future. We are a living eternal being, because we are part of that divinity. What a gift to be given, to be a part of creation that we're still creating. So I can't say enough about, some people like to call him Yeshua. I think everybody knows who Jesus Christ is. I mean, it's him. He's very charismatic. I do want to say a couple things about him. He's very charismatic. Think about it. He, in his time, hung out with undesirables, right? Sailors, which I'm sure they had a potty mouth. Prostitutes, I'm sure they had a potty mouth. And he heard their jokes. He's so easy to be around. He's very funny. He's very validating. He doesn't see wrong with anyone. He sees, he takes it for everybody, based on what they know. Well, that's just the decision they had to make at the time. He's such an advocate for everyone. And he is, in my opinion, 100% everything he says he is. He's never given me any reason not to. He still gives me evidence to today. It was him that told me to come out 15, 20 years ago about I could always see things and know things, but, I work with God and Jesus. And he said, it's time for you to come out. I was like, no, no. And he said, why? I said, I don't want to. And he's like, he said, why is it? And I said, well, I don't want to be seen as a charlatan. He said, so you won't. And I haven't. And God has brought me incredibly wonderful people. And the way I look at it is, God has people in this world right now, not just me, many people right now he's working through, because there is, regardless of what some people say, and I have all different kinds, even on my Seeking Heaven channel, and some don't think there's evil and this and that. And I don't believe in putting anyone in fear, but there is opposition and there are others out there to destroy. But what we don't talk about enough is there are many here that help to inspire and to uplift and to show God's joy and love. There is a nonsense going around that people that have gifts, they're all evil, but that's ridiculous, because God's going to have his people here too, because he's just not going to let things run amok. And Heather, I believe you're one of them, because you're spreading joy, you're spreading light. You've always been a light to this world. And
Thank you.
you are turning other people on to shine bright too. And we need our gifts. We need our connection to God. And when you're connected to the divine, if I get a revelation, chances are you're going to get a revelation. Chances are you're going to get a gut feeling or something, because that's evidential that, hey, we're connected to the same source, the same loving source. So I always encourage people to, there are certain things to be afraid of, but not many. And I think that there's so much in that world, and I don't believe God's people should be fearful, and that we should really concentrate on our joy. And a lot of people don't have enough joy, and I think you bring that to people. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That is so kind of you. You are such a beautiful light. I loved talking to Tamara. So much information she gave us about her near-death experiences, so detailed. And coming up in part 2, she's going to share one she had at 38, which is really unique. But that's not all. Here's what's coming up on part 2.
He's lean, but he has muscles. His hair, when he showed me, was below his shoulders. He looked like someone that worked outside. His skin was coppery, a very pretty coppery color, kind of like you look at people in that area that got that pretty copper colored skin. His eyes were blue-green. He is real. He loves everyone. There's nothing that you have to do to get his approval, and he's there for you for his guidance, being a teacher, being a friend, being a protector, a redeemer. I think our soul is in different places on different planets. That's how big we are. We can't even comprehend it, but a part of our soul is there. We are just a small portion in this little vessel right here. We are magnificent.
A lot of people believe that their loved ones will go to heaven, but sometimes they're less certain about animals they love. You had a neat experience when you were in heaven, and you had broken this egg, and you were concerned about the bird in the egg. Can you tell us that briefly,
Yes.
what you were told?
Oh,
So part 2 is really interesting. I do hope you'll come back, but I would love to know your thoughts on the near-death experiences that she did share and some of the things that she encountered. To me, it really was just intriguing, some of the different things that she did, and how she experienced Jesus. And I'll ask more questions about that in part 2. But what are your thoughts now? Please share those in the comments. Maybe you just want to say you made it. That would be great as well. I do appreciate those made it's. It means a lot when you do comment. And if you liked it, if you want to give it a like, I always appreciate that, as you know it. For those of you that want more information on my guest, anytime, you can always find that too in the description. And just click the little word more. That'll take you into the description. That always has links or dates to part 2. And it'll also have a link to my playlist with all of my episodes on it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And if you're having trouble, I've heard some people saying they're getting unsubscribed and they don't want to be unsubscribed. So just keep checking that. Make sure that you are subscribed, and reach out to me if you do have issues with that. Thank you so much for being here today. I do hope you'll join me in part 2. There's a lot that's coming up. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.